Hey, podcast listeners, Kinsey with Voice of San Diego here, and we are launching a podcast texting club for you listeners. To join, just take out your phone, do it right now. Okay, you got it. Now text the word podcast to 619-202-9051. Again, that's the word podcast and the number 619-202-9051. We'll send you links to new episodes weekly, solicit questions and ideas for future shows. It's really just a better way to keep in touch with you, our smartest, most dedicated, loyal VOSD fans. So again, text the word podcast to 619-202-9051 to join the conversation.
What I plan to do is work with every single individual on this dais. That's what I plan to do, to move their district forward and to move this city forward. That's all I want to do. And I want to move my district forward. I want to continue to make the progress that we've been making in my district and work with everyone. And that's how you do it, is working with every single individual so that they can also appreciate your issues and your items and help you move their items forward. That's what we all want to do, is move our agenda forward, and that's what I plan to do if elected council president.
Well, that was Myrtle Cole. Almost 2 years ago, she made her pitch to become the president of the San Diego City Council. The title, it's really one of the most powerful positions in the region. She won that. She reached the top of San Diego politics. Now she's in danger of losing all of that political influence she built up. This is a special Voice of San Diego podcast on the 2018 election. I'm Scott Lewis. Welcome to those of you listening, by the way, on News Radio 600 Kogo. I'm Scott Lewis, here with my friend Andrew Keatts.
What's up?
And Sara Libby.
Hello.
How are you guys?
Doing great.
Today, District 4 on the San Diego City Council. Just 5 months before Council President got elected by her peers to that position, she set in motion the challenge of her political career. What happened?
Yeah, so Council President Cole had, up until that point, been sort of an anonymous member of the City Council in a lot of ways. I don't think she had much of a profile. This was in July of 2016, amid a national conversation about police shootings of unarmed black men and racial profiling more generally. She held a community meeting in Encanto on racial profiling, and 4 other council members attended that meeting. And the following Tuesday at a city council meeting, she thanked her colleagues for attending and then kind of apologized that there were a group of young people at the meeting who were both disruptive and disrespectful. She then said this.
Black on black crime is an issue, and that was never addressed. That's why when someone says, do you support... do you think there's racial profiling? Yeah, because blacks are shooting blacks. So who did they stop? They're not going to stop a white male. They're not going to stop a Hispanic male or Asian. They're going to stop an African American.
That comment did not sit particularly well with one of her staffers. Her name was Monica Montgomery.
The day that she said that black people deserve to be profiled because they commit all the crimes is the day that I left her office. And for me, there's really not a lot of turning back from there. The decisions that she has made with regard to police reform and accountability since that time have reflected those comments.
Not only did she leave, she started running for that office. And just 3 months ago, she stunned us all when she performed better in the primary election than her former boss, Myrtle Cole. So it was what, 61%?
61% of people voted against Myrtle Cole. They didn't all vote for Monica Montgomery, but collectively, the entire field received 61% of the vote, Myrtle Cole 39%, and yes, Monica Montgomery received more votes than Myrtle Cole.
So we invited 195,000 times.
Yes.
Approximately.
Yeah.
Myrtle Cole to come on this show and spend some time with us and talk about her accomplishments, her vision, all those things. She did not. We've scraped the web as best we can to get some clips, as you heard at the beginning of the show, from her. Honestly, she really doesn't say much. It was hard to pull much together on that front.
Yeah, I think if you listen to the clip at the beginning of the show, it's hard to discern anything. She talks a lot about moving forward and progress, but doesn't really single out a specific priority or thing that she cares about. And I think that's part of the reason, honestly, why the racial profiling comments kind of stuck out. Obviously, they're really provocative comments and they would have caused a stir anyway. But when they're coming from someone who doesn't kind of articulate what she stands for, hasn't like really seized on any particular issue, and this is something, that she chooses to make a statement on, I think it kind of made it stand out even more.
Yeah, there's one thing that stands out to me from that clip is the use of the word item, because the only time you would use the word item is as like that's the word that appears on the city council docket to describe issues. Everyone else in the real world views their issues as causes or concerns or questions or policy solutions, preferred outcomes,
issues they care about, passions.
Like it's like the most bureaucratic way to think to reduce it down to like item number 4.
Definitely.
Wow, that's an interesting point. I didn't notice that. Incumbents just don't lose.
Yeah,
absolutely.
In at least local political races, unless they've been the subject of an incredible scandal of some kind.
And often not even then. Yeah, there hasn't been a sitting city council member defeated since 1992, I believe.
Yeah, Judy McCarty, who was involved in the scandal.
Right. So, it basically just doesn't happen. And so for that reason, even in spite of the results on the June primary, I would have to say that Myrtle Cole remains a favorite only because Monica Montgomery would be bucking history so significantly to win in the general election.
Yeah. Well, Montgomery has some big pledges, including one she says she will throw out the entire staff that works for Myrtle Cole right now, her former colleagues.
I think that there is a culture that the people at City Hall generally think a certain way about District 4, that we don't deserve the services that the rest of the city gets and receives. And there will be none of that lingering. There will be none of that lingering because it is a culture. It's about, having a culture change. And it is not anything personal. It really is not. But our community is suffering and we cannot have any more do-overs.
I think that highlights that we're not talking about like just one issue with police or whatever. She's really tapped into a kind of, I don't want to say desperation, but something like that, right?
Yeah, just a lack of attention, caring, like the sense that they're not all equal.
And what she's saying there is that not only that, but that the staff has sort of accepted that.
Right, like some sort of inferiority complex.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and I think it's reflected in the people I've talked to in the community. It's like we're fed up. We're fed up of talking about the same things. And anybody who's followed this community, our reporting, other people's reporting in this community for a while, the conversations don't particularly change. We'll get into some of that, but in the last 6 years that I've been covering this community, we've been talking about the very same things this entire time, and I think that comes through in some of the frustration you hear about the need to simply make a change.
Yeah, so she obviously her campaign started with this I've had it about the police issue. So you got into that with her. You spent some time with her, Andy, and talked to her about the police issue. Here was her take just on her overall philosophy about the issues of relationship with the police and the community.
When we talk about police reform, we're not anti-police, but we are pro-justice. And so we have to acknowledge some of the things that are going on in our community that now are not just anecdotal, that are, in studies that we can point to. And so when we have a strong voice in the community that is saying these are the things that are happening to us and it's backed up now by evidence that we see in a study. We have to act on that, and that is part of being connected to the community. And I don't think that it should mean sort of this type of death sentence or that we don't have a good relationship with police officers just because we're standing up for our community and standing up for right. Because no matter what, we need checks and balances for every single entity that exists.
So one thing that I'm always surprised that gets talked about not that much is that Myrtle Cole has a police background. Is that right? And so I think if you think about that, some of her comments maybe make a little more sense. And certainly she could argue, if she talked much, that makes her like a great liaison for the community between her and the law enforcement community. But it doesn't really, she's never really made that case as far as I know.
Yeah, and I think, is it fair to say Montgomery is the one who is most clearly stands with like a Black Lives Matter movement?
I think I wouldn't necessarily call it Black Lives Matter because it is very specifically local, and Monica herself pinpointed it to me as that there is a racial justice movement in District 4 that she believes was really awakened and ignited around a few years ago, as we've reported, the decision by the district attorney to charge different defendants with sort of the guilt by association statute. She really puts that as a turning point moment that catalyzed a movement within her district. And so, yes, I think
Reclaim the Community, those groups.
And I think she would certainly, it would be fair to say that she is the candidate of that movement.
Yeah, I've covered that case for a long time. And about a year or two ago, I went to a conference put on by Aaron Harvey and Brandon Duncan on a Saturday just about like gang databases. And it really kind of shocked me just that this, obscure kind of wonky topic attracted tons of people just on a Saturday at like a community college in that district.
Dial it back a little bit. Who were you talking about? And
so Aaron Harvey and Brandon Duncan are two of the people who were charged as part of that prosecution in connection to a shooting, but prosecutors admitted that they weren't at the shooting. They didn't carry out the shooting, but they alleged that they were part of this gang tied to the shooting and therefore could be painted with having been a part of these crimes. And so it's just like a very, very broad brush application.
And so I think there's been a number of different instances where this movement has become especially vocal, has sort of flexed its organizing ability. The Alongo shooting in El Cajon, the McNeil shooting in National City, when the racial profiling study that Monica Montgomery mentions there was released, there's been, it had, that moment created something, and that something is now being championed, I think, by Monica.
And that sentence she points in there, we need checks and balances for every single entity that exists. I think that's an important point I always like to make. Like, the police have this incredible power, in some sense, to take people's freedom and to take their lives if they're in danger, right?
Yeah.
And freedom is probably not the right word, but the point being, like, that is such a big deal, both of those things, that we need an alternative check. We need an oversight. We need, whether it's the press or a more official oversight or community oversight, actual it could go all the way to protests or just community hearings, that sort of thing. And so it has to be a whole portfolio approach in order to address this whole issue. And that's what she's tied in here. It doesn't have to be a radical position.
Right.
And so, but it's not just about police in that neighborhood. You were there after this, as we said, man, we got to get a handle on how we, and others missed this story about what Monica Montgomery's campaign was doing in that district. And you went down there. What other issues did you hear about people talking?
Well, one thing that comes up often in that district is the need for just good, decent grocery stores, good, decent local restaurants that people can sit in that are not taco shops or fast food restaurants. That there are plenty of those, but just a good local sit-down restaurant with healthy ingredients.
Yeah, Myrtle Cole herself talked about this in 2013 when she ran for office.
We need grocery stores. We have one Food for Less with inferior produce. We have one Ralph's with great produce, and we're going to come to the table and work on bringing all these jobs and all these industries and businesses into the district.
It's an old theme. I remember Tony Young. He was the representative of this district years ago. He was also council president. He took me on a tour one time of the whole district, and he's just like, we need something there. We need a grocery store there. We need development there. We need housing there. It's such a different feel in some of the other areas of town where they're like, don't build anything, like literally don't even build a crosswalk.
Yeah.
And then here they're like, whatever, come here, build things. We need you to build things. And has it actually happened?
I mean, there are some things, Market Creek Plaza didn't used to be there, and now it is. So
the library.
The library, there have been some changes. I mean, there's a study that if you spend enough time with the sorts of connected people in that district who are in and out of City Hall, they'll cite regularly is, I think it's been done twice now, is the District 4 residents spend something on the order of $2 billion a year on retail goods, and more than half of that is not spent in District 4. Mm-hmm. And so they want to have more opportunities so they don't have to travel as much, and so that they can kind of generate job opportunities with all this spending that could otherwise take place in their district. But look, the development conversation in District 4 is also especially interesting because, yes, as you say, there is the extent to which in other districts people basically feel like they have what they need. So often it comes down to saying no because more development means more people, siphoning off the things that are already available to them. So there you do have a hunger for more development. But you also sometimes and we talked about this with Monica, there's sometimes a tension between market rate development and affordable housing development that might be counterintuitive to what you would think because it is, to some extent, a low-income community. They actually want more market rate development because there's a prevailing sentiment that they've done their share as far as affordable housing is concerned, and other districts should now be expected to do that as well, and that if they were to get the market rate development, there would be a greater market need for retail to go along with it, and that they've recognized that the more affordable housing you build, the less desire there's going to be for businesses to come and open up shop there.
That's fascinating. I actually ran into that in nearby National City. I was hosting moderating a debate between the council candidates and the mayoral candidates there, and that was a big theme. There was the one side with people saying we need a lot more affordable housing, and then another vocal side saying no, we've done it.
Yeah,
we need higher rents. We need different constituencies to be here and live here and thrive here.
And so I talked to Monica about this and asked her if, first of all, if she felt like that observation of mine was accurate. She said it was, and she referred to it as a need for balanced development.
I think the balanced development approach in District 4 is very, very important because we have a very balanced community, and we do not want to, we want to give people the opportunity to live. We want to give seniors the opportunity to live and not make the sacrifice of paying their rent or paying for their medication or paying for food. And we want young people to be able to, live and thrive in San Diego. At the same time, we do need a presentable portfolio for developers that are coming in. But we also need some grit and determination and, the ability to stick to and not shy away from the developers who want to come in. I mean, a bus tour is cool, but what is the follow-up? Yeah. What are the promises? What are the things that are needed? This is the same thing that I ask Civic San Diego representatives that come to our planning groups is, part of your report is basically nobody wants to come here. No businesses want to come here. Well, who have you reached out to? Yeah. And what has been the initial conversation? And how are we building on that?
So talk about that for a sec. So Civic San Diego, she referred to, that's the former CCDC and former Southeastern Economic Development Corporation was lumped into one. Now Civic San Diego manages that whole thing, which includes property in Southeastern San Diego, right? And so there's still a lot of tension about why hasn't that developed, right?
Yeah, I mean, they own a lot of land in the area. I mean, it's city-owned land. The Civic is the agency and presently responsible for developing it. And yeah, there's been, I think it's fair to say, a real hesitancy from the community to embrace Civic as the agency to take on that role. And that's even though for a very long time, until recently, Reese Jarrett was in charge of it. Reese Jarrett has a long history in Southeastern San Diego. He grew up there. He had worked for the Southeastern San Diego Development Company back when it was focused there. He had developed different projects in that area. So, but there was still a sense that this was maybe not an agency who was listening to them completely. And I think you hear that from Monica.
It's an interesting tension that she's highlighted because, even though they're so hungry for development and for people to invest in their community, they're also like any community want the ability to be discerning. And so they're saying don't just dump all affordable housing here. And if you remember back to a few years ago, the density fight over the trolley stations near Claremont and stuff, there was those heated discussions where I think Ed Harris was oh, just give it all to, those communities over there that want it. And he was sort of referring to these communities like they'll take anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And a lot of people took offense to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, certain community planning group members reached out to me the next day and said, what did he say?
Yeah,
right.
What?
I remember that, yeah.
And so I think that's what these people talk about when they say we want to be on equal footing with all the council districts and we don't just want to be like a dumping ground.
Yeah, why should we, of all places, be left saying either yes or no and never in between when everyone else gets the opportunity to spend all of their time on the in-between area?
Yeah.
I noticed another thing really caught my eye in your conversation with Monica Montgomery was kind of her unapologetic take on needing to address schools in the area. Now, just to be clear, the city council and, of course, the city of San Diego has no real role over the school district, except in one way. The charter of the city of San Diego, its sort of constitution, is also the charter for the San Diego Unified School District. And the city schools, the school district doesn't cover the entire city of San Diego, but it does cover this area, and it does cover most of the city. To hear more about that, stay tuned until after this break from the people who make this show happen and to our partners and others at News Radio 600 Kogo. Thanks for your partnership, and get on the podcast. It's good stuff.
This Voice of San Diego podcast is sponsored in part by Competitive Edge Research. As a nonprofit news organization, Voice of San Diego depends on our members, foundations, and sponsors like Competitive Edge Research. We are very grateful for all of our supporters, and we will recognize their support during the show. Competitive Edge Research, San Diego's premier public opinion research firm, sponsors this podcast because they like good journalism as much as they like good polling. Since 1987, Competitive Edge has helped clients see the why buried deep within the numbers. Competitive Edge designs comprehensive research studies, collects bulletproof data, and employs robust analytics so you'll understand why things are the way they are. Competitive Edge. Know what to do. And if you like Voice of San Diego's work and want to become a sponsor, contact us at development@voiceofsandiego.org.
We are back, continuing a special podcast on the elections. And in particular, this is District 4, the city council race. The shocker in the primary, the former staff member of Council President Myrtle Cole has beat Myrtle Cole in the primary. That doesn't necessarily matter. They both advanced to the runoff now. We were talking about Monica Montgomery's take on local schools in the area. She's pretty fired up about it.
Yeah, so when I was interviewing her before, actually, this podcast interview, she told me that she supports something that is an agenda item being pushed by Republicans on the city council that would change the city charter, change the San Diego Unified's charter to reform elections in local schools. Specifically, it would allow school board elections to happen in just the same way that city council elections are, which is right now in the school board, you have a primary in your sub-district, but then you run in the general election for the entire school district.
Which means essentially you have to run citywide, which is a very expensive process.
Right. And she said, no, I agree with the Republicans. I'd like to change it. And the reason she said was, that she'd feel like a hypocrite if she didn't, because the only reason she has the ability to run the sort of grassroots campaign that doesn't have a huge amount of funding that she is doing right now is because it's a district-only election. She can reasonably figure out how to knock on enough doors on her own to potentially win this race, whereas if it was citywide, it wouldn't even be possible. So she told me that, and it really caught me by surprise because she's running as such a progressive member of she's running such a progressive campaign. And she told me she thinks Myrtle Cole is a moderate, and it is, the school board and some of these progressive forces are the ones who oppose this. But I asked her, I said, so why is it that you were willing to buck your allies, people that you work with on most other issues? Why were you willing to break with them on this very specific issue? And this is what she said.
I think a lot of people understand it, though, because they understand the state of our schools in the 4th District. Those are the parents that I talk to every single day. And that's, where my commitment lies. My commitment lies to the parents who, want to send their kids to good schools, and a board that right now in its nature and its function is not showing us that our students are priority in District 4, i.e. District E. Yeah. And so that's, where my advocacy in that arena, that's where it comes from. It's because I really am connected to the parents and the advocates on the ground floor that are working with students every single day. There are other solutions and ways that we can be involved in our schools, but I really think that a representative that really comes from the community and is chosen by the community is very important. And like I said, I would feel hypocritical not saying that, being in the position that I'm in right now. I don't think my opponent is progressive. I think she's moderate. I think, for her time, then that was a way that a lot of folks went, and it served its purpose. But I think now we are dealing with, a crisis in a lot of different areas that needs strong leadership that is willing to risk and really willing to invest in attacking poverty.
I think if you look at it on its face, it's kind of counterintuitive that she's, a progressive who's maybe siding with a policy supported by Republicans. But if you think about this overarching theme of the district feeling like it's not on equal footing with everyone else, it makes a lot of sense. If you remember, I think we've talked about this before, the school board election in which Lachey Collins and Sharon Whitehurst Payne faced off against each other. This is for this representing this same area. And the sub-district, chose Lachey Collins, and when it went to a district-wide vote, Sharon Whitehurst Payne won, and so that's, just sort of goes along with what she's saying, and that the group that's from this community chose a different person, and like the rest of the city kind of canceled that out.
Yeah, it's not just I don't think left, right, progressive, conservative really captures this. It's almost more of like what's working for one group versus like a more organic approach, right?
Yeah, and there's one extent in which it perfectly aligns, which is that Myrtle Cole has been very clear about the fact that she's counting on the labor movement to deliver her to victory. Mm-hmm. She, in the interview I did with her this summer, she said this was right after the primary when she didn't do particularly well, and she told me, yeah, look, I didn't really run a campaign, but me and labor, we just had a meeting. I was with a bunch of labor leaders. We're all systems go. We're going to win this thing.
Well, we did talk to two different voters with two different takes on their district in District 4, and let's hear what they had to say.
My name is Vanity Tenorio, and I live in Encanto Heights.
And what are the biggest issues or concerns that will motivate you to vote in November?
Hope this is not selfish, but there are two that are close to me. One is the homeless situation in my area, and also, the mobility situation in my area. There aren't many sidewalks or street lights, and we have a lot of commuters that walk, bike, and scoot. For City Council, I'm going to cast my vote for Ms. Cole. I feel that this go-around, if you will, she has an opportunity to really reach out to the constituents that already support her, and there's lots of areas where she can gain new ones.
Do you feel like she has solid plans on homelessness and will do sort of the work that you're most interested in?
At this point, I can only say that I'm hoping that she is, because she sees it every day being so close to the community. Her office is right here in the neighborhood. But I haven't seen a plan just yet, but I'm looking out. Being that I live and work in the neighborhood, I see her open office hours. It seems like there's a consistent opportunity for people to come to her. I don't have much experience at other districts, but the fact that there is a weekly first come, first serve open door policy, I think that is a strength of hers.
Hi, my name is Songawawa, and I live in Lincoln Park.
So what are the biggest issues or concerns that are motivating you to vote in November?
One is small business representation, just really economic development. Another thing is accountability for our political officials, both with education and with policies. Yeah, a lot of it deals with jobs, opportunity with jobs. People don't, like, even for me, like just graduating school, and I'm out here struggling looking for a job outside of doing AmeriCorps, doing volunteering. There's a lot of community events, but when it comes to just making an income to support yourself, there's no jobs. And then with jobs, then it goes with looking for housing. Like, technically speaking, we live in a community where housing is supposed to be cheaper, but it's still above what anybody can afford without working like 2 or 3 jobs. And you're still making maybe like $2 over minimum wage, but you have to like go 25, 35 minutes out of the city for a job, which you're already taking gas, and you're coming back over here and barely making it through.
And who will you vote for City Council? And why?
Monica Montgomery. One, her story of being a civil rights activist attorney, her story of holding people accountable for their actions. She worked for Myrtle Cole, and sometimes the people under you learn the best from you, both your weaknesses and your strengths. She knows Myrtle's weaknesses, and she's using it as a strength for her campaign. And I believe, one, because she learned from her, she knows what to do better, and she can enact that. And she has the community support. She speaks to the community. She talks to us, and she listens to what we have to say, not only to get our vote, but to really be able to enact that. And that, for me, is what a city official, any political official, should do.
So why won't you vote for the incumbent City Council President, Myrtle Cole?
Because when you get comfortable in power, you believe votes are supposed to come for you. They're just supposed to come to you. I mean, getting her to come to community events up until the primary election that Monica ran, she wouldn't come. She would show face maybe for like 20, 30 minutes, and then you don't see her. And for me, it's like I don't want someone to show face. That's our negative vision of politics. They just show face, and then they're in and they're out. If you're in office, if you're representing the people, represent the people, see what they want. We're people, our visions will change. You need to be on top of that. That's your job. That's your career. That should be your passion. Acknowledge it, show it, and do it.
Well, October 6th is Politicos, and we had invited Myrtle Cole and Monica Montgomery to come and have a robust debate about these and other issues. And Monica Montgomery's in, but Myrtle Cole has literally not gotten back to us at all. We never crushed her on anything, did we?
No.
I think it's more of a general, I don't see her giving interviews anywhere else either. And so I don't think it's like a particular animus towards us, although maybe it is. Who knows?
It's something else. When you get to be council president, that's a once in a lifetime job.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a big deal. You get to control the agenda of the entire city. And it's just so odd to me to not want to go nuts with that. Not nuts as in like, doing weird things. I mean, just like doing so much and having so much fun with it. It would be such an interesting post.
I just think it's also worth remembering that talking to the media is not about making us feel good. It's about talking to voters, and it has really nothing to do with us. We're just a conduit.
Very good conduit.
Yeah, some better than others.
Conduit. Yes. So I don't know. What do you think? So the labor, that's a big question. Has the right of center coalition of any kind gotten involved in this race?
It'll be interesting to see when some campaign finance reports start coming out and you start seeing whether committees have been established, so any sort of IEs. It's not impossible to imagine some sort of loose affiliation of conservative-minded folks coming and actually supporting Monica Montgomery. It's easy to imagine them not doing that as well.
Yeah, because it's not a typical sort of breakdown of the Democratic.
I mean, it would move the council to the left.
Yeah, that's what's interesting. Is they
might get a vote that they need to get this sort of school reform passed, but in doing, they would also push the council to the left.
It's odd because on these other districts, you clearly have a more middle type Democrat running against a more labor, committed Democrat, and in this case, it would be you have a fierce, independent minded person. And yeah, that's a tough bet probably for some of these dudes. And so we'll see. Plus the alliance with the criminal justice reform movement and stuff, that would be a tough bet.
And and who knows? The thing to watch is whether Monica could do it on her own.
Yeah,
I mean,
without that,
she did something in June, and as Omar Passons, who was running for county supervisor, has said many times, he knocked on a lot of doors in this district, and as far as he was concerned, that primary surprise was not even remotely a surprise. So,
all right, we're going to do these special episodes for a few other the hottest races in the area, including District 2, the city council race there, California 49th District, and District 8 of the city council. Thank you to everybody here, especially Kinsey Moreland and Adriana Eldies, who put together a lot of that work and some of those clips. And to my friends here, we'll see you next week.
You're listening to the Voice of San Diego Podcast Network. Visit voiceofsandiego.org/podcast to learn more about the rest of the shows in our network. We've got Cura Chaos, a live podcast featuring interviews with movers and shakers from San Diego and Baja California, and The Kept Faith, a sports podcast. Be sure to give them a try, and thanks for listening.